Hello, 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 citizens of the Writer's Corner podcast. This is your host, author Anthony Avina, and welcome to episode 37 of this podcast titled Why I Chose Horror. Today we're going to discuss a few things. I have a few pop culture news headlines to discuss. I'm going to give you two updates on Lexington and Fifth, my 2016 Wattpad project that is a weekly chapter a week project. And I'm going to give you a review of The Killing of Mummy's Boy by Joan Ellis. And of course, I'm going to discuss the main topic, why I chose horror. So without further ado, let's get right into it, shall we? Let's get moving on to pop culture news. Okay, first pop culture news item is Zack Snyder teased the upcoming filming of the highly anticipated Justice League film, with a picture of himself with Jason Momoa, who is going to be playing Aquaman, and they also showcase Aquaman's costume along with Mira's costume and the Flash's costume, and there's a possible sighting of either a Nightwing costume or a Green Lantern costume, which none of that has been confirmed yet. Filming for this film is set to begin on April 11th. Actors Brie Larson and Leo DiCaprio have won awards for Best Actress and Actor, and Spotlight won Best Picture at this year's 2016 Oscars. Next up in the headline news, Vanessa Hudgens is set to star in NBC's Powerless, a DC Comics comedy set in an insurance office company, and the show is going to deal with ordinary humans who are tasked with helping people whose buildings, homes, or any other property are pretty much destroyed in the big climactic superhero fights we always kind of take for granted. And recent news has suggested that Alan Tudyk is also set to star in the NBC pilot. Telltale Games has released a brand new mini-series of their popular Walking Dead games titled The Walking Dead Michonne. They premiered the first of 3 mini-series episodes on the platforms, which shows a period of time where Michonne left Rick and the group to conquer her own demons, and then came back. This is what happens during that period she was on her own, where while aboard of a ship looking for supplies along the coast of the Chesapeake Bay, they get a signal calling for help, only to discover a massacre in a settlement known as Monroe, which may or may not be holding those responsible for the carnage. The first part of this game is out now, with the other 2 to follow soon. And finally, the news that has been over a decade in the making, something I've been waiting for since I was 13 years old, and something I'm super excited to share with you guys today. Stephen King's The Dark Tower is officially being made into a feature film through Sony Pictures, and is set to begin filming in 7 weeks in South Africa, with a hopeful estimated release of January 2017. Even more exciting is the phenomenal casting of Idris Elba as Roland Deschain, otherwise known as The Last Gunslinger, and Matthew McConaughey as the Man in Black, also known as Walter Paddock, Walter O'Dim, Randall Flagg, and other infamous names. While no other casting has officially been announced yet, these 2 stars are set to set this franchise on fire. And it is super exciting to hear as well that they're going to change things up and start the film series, halfway through where the book series began. I think the first book and elements of the 4th book would make a great TV series, and I think that's what they're thinking too. So hopefully this first film will do so well that it'll gain attention, and Ron Howard's original vision of a film and television franchise will come to life. Those are the pop culture news headlines this week. Now let's move on to the Lexington and Fifth Week 8 and Week 9 updates. Last week's chapter, week 8, was titled The Funeral. The song of the week that week was called This Is How I Disappear by MCR. It's a very dark song, it's very sad, and it really blends well with the chapter because it deals with the sadness of attending Kate's funeral. It's how Ella reunites with the others from her past. It introduces her fiance Connor in the current time, and it talks about this mysterious man watching the service and how another figure just runs through the parking lot, kind of spooking Ella a bit. This is really the introduction of the current modern day plot line, and soon the past and the present will start colliding, which is really exciting. Week 9's update, the chapter is called Reunion. The song of the week is called Will You Be There by Michael Jackson. It's a song of closeness, of remembrance, and this is a chapter where Ella, Connor, and Nina have come together to kind of remember and commemorate Kate and her memory and her legacy. And it's a sad time, and they're just trying to band together to kind of overcome it. But unfortunately, Greg shows up. Greg, who was the mastermind behind the prank gone wrong from chapters 1 through 5, and he's not a nice guy. He's kind of an alcoholic. He is brutish. He is violent. And there's a big confrontation when all of these people reunite in chapter 9. Those are the Lexington and 5th week updates. Weeks 8 and 9. Week 8 is currently up. Chapter 8 is up on Wattpad.com. So be sure you look for the story, Lexington and 5th, by author Anthony Avina. Subscribe to it, follow it, whatever you do, and share it if you like it. It really means a lot to me. This is a whole year-long project. So stay tuned because week 9 is going to be going up this Friday. Now let's move on to the review of the week. We are going to be discussing The Killing of Mummy's Boy by Joan Ellis. Here are a few thoughts that I have on this book. As a disclaimer, I will say I received a free copy of this book from the author and book lover Cat Lady Publicity in return for a fair and honest review. So, many thanks, guys. A fresh new take on the thriller genre takes form in The Killing of Mummy's Boy, an incredible novel written by Joan Ellis. Written to feel like a classic 1970s era murder mystery British film, the novel follows Sandra, a young woman whose son Carl is in the witness protection program. While aboard a train, she meets a stranger whose past is steeped in murder. Unknown to her at the time, she reports a missing card on the phone and gives out her personal information for Ben, the murderer she meets on the train, to hear. With her son on the run and after helping put local gangster Lee Elliott behind bars for murder, Sandra finds herself alone and afraid as this mysterious murderer now knows her address, and so much more. Soon she is in a high-raising, high-stakes game of life and death as someone begins breaking into her home, and she begins to cross paths with Ben in several unexpected ways. The artful way this book is written gives tribute to the rich culture of England, from the streets of London to the isolated countryside. The internal struggle of Sandra is heart-pounding and emotional as well, allowing the reader to empathize and feel the pain she suffers as the story progresses. What really sets the story apart from others is the great attention to detail, whether it's through the settings of the story, to the chaotic character exchanges, or the twists and turns in the story itself. The Killing of Mummy's Boy is a phenomenal hit thriller for author Joan Ellis, and the exploration of moral integrity, right and wrong, and the true meaning of family are expertly explored through the novel. Pick up your copy of The Killing of Mummy's Boy by Joan Ellis today. And there you go, guys. If you guys like that review and want to read it in its full entirety, You can check it out on my blog, authoranthonyavina.tumblr.com. You can also check it out on Goodreads and Amazon.com. And yeah, let me know what book you think I should review next week. Now that we've gotten through all that, let's get to the main topic of this podcast, shall we? Why I chose horror. This is more of an opinion piece this week, rather than, a teaching experience. But maybe it'll help you find your passion in genre as far as writing goes. Maybe my words will inspire you to look at what genre inspires you, whether it's the same as mine or a different one. Why I chose horror? Well, there are many reasons I chose horror, and I didn't write anything down. I wanted this to be a natural speaking experience. I just wanted to talk to you guys and kind of say the things I felt about the horror genre as they came to me right now in the moment. Well, there are a lot of things about horror. I love scary stuff. I've always been drawn to that genre. When I was 12 years old, 12 years old, I was reading Stephen King novels. When I was a little kid, obviously I read little kid books, but I always loved reading. Reading has always been my passion. And when I was a teenager, Stephen King just spoke to me. He spoke in a way that was real, that was honest, that explored the human nature in the form of horror. And I think that's what really grabbed me about horror. It is scary, it is haunting, it is bone chilling, but at the same time, the horror genre can allow you to dive deeper into the human mind, into the human nature, than other genres might be able to, and at least in my opinion. When you're writing a story, or you're reading a story even, and you come across a character who is being tracked down by a serial killer and has to find a way to survive, that person in that moment finds an inner strength they never knew they had before. They are put into a life and death situation where one wrong move can mean the end for them. And because of that situation, they dive deeper into what kind of person they really are, what they've always been, and they go for it. They push themselves to the limit. And the same goes for any other genre, whether it's surviving a zombie apocalypse or being hunted down by a deranged vampire, or a person who is bitten by a werewolf and has to fight their inner nature. These scary horror elements, while on the surface it's about entertaining and scaring people, when you really dive past the surface and you get down to the bone nitty gritty, it's a human condition study. It's about studying human nature. It's about delving into, when you're facing those impossible situations, it actually allows a person to make connections either easier or more deeply than one may have without that horror element to it. I think some of my favorite books that have had the best characters, the most thought out, developed characters I've ever read have been in the horror genre, or at least in subgenres like the thriller, mystery, ghost genres, stuff like that. My passion when I'm reading is really thought out characters. And even when I'm reading young adult genre novels right now, there are elements of horror in it, like the Mortal Instruments series. Very young adult, but when it gets down to the creatures and the fights and stuff, it's very bloody, very gruesome stuff. It's definitely horror based. And I that's why I love that series so much, and that's why I love the genre. It's a way to, it's a way to peel back the layers of the human mind and the human spirit. It's a way to, when you take away the politics that we all face every day, when you take away the the religious divides that keep us separated, the stuff that seems important in everyday life, but really is petty and only serves to harm us as a society. When all that stuff is stripped away and you're put into a horror situation, um, you find out what kind of person you are, and you find out, what kind of society we live in. Because if you were to take a horror book like with a serial killer and put it into real life, if a group of people were being hunted down by a serial killer, politics don't matter in that moment. Religion doesn't matter in that moment. Religion's not even a factor in that moment. The stuff that keeps us separated as a society, whether it be really serious topics like sexuality or skin tone, skin color, ethnicity, race, any of that stuff, gender, none of that stuff matters when it comes to horror. When you're faced with a life or death situation, when you are scared to death, all that stuff melts away, and you're just a person. You're left naked and bare, and in a situation like that, all that stuff being stripped away, being naked and bare, like I said, you see what kind of person you are. You see what kind of person other people are. And that's what really fascinates me with the horror genre. Yes, I like to entertain people and I like to scare people, but I really love delving deeper into the human psyche. I love delving deeper into what makes a person who they are, and what makes a character so gripping, so addicting to read about. Um, One of my favorite horror books of all time is Stephen King's The Shining, and in that book, there's such an interesting character study of the Torrance family, from the father Jack Torrance to the little son Danny and the wife Wendy. They're put into this horrible situation where they're all being haunted by this hotel. They're all experiencing different things from the hotel, and not only are they being affected in different ways, but they're experiencing the hotel in different ways, and the hotel is changing based on them, which is really an interesting thing. And I think you don't get to see that very often in straight up romance novels or drama novels. And don't get me wrong, I read those genres as well, and I love them. I love multiple genres. Okay, I love reading in general, but the horror is always going to have a special place in my heart. And I think horror can do certain things with plot and character developments that not a lot of other genres can. So that is why your host here, author Anthony Avina, chose the horror genre for his specialty. I also write science fiction and action adventure, romance, all that stuff. And all those things can still be tied into the horror genre, which is really fascinating. But yes, I chose the horror genre. My question of the week is, what genre would you choose to write in, or what is your favorite genre to read, and why? Leave your questions down below. Thank you guys so much for listening this week. This has been the Writer's Corner Podcast, episode 37, Why I Chose Horror. Thank you for tuning in. If you're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, Avina Vlogs, give this video a big thumbs up, like this video, comment on it, favorite it, and share it. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. It would mean the world to me if you could. And check out our links down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And hit the eye in the sky for today's recommended videos, playlists, and more. Thanks, guys. And if you're listening to this on SoundCloud or iTunes, please subscribe to the podcast on either one of those sites or apps or whatever. And leave your reviews. Let us know what you think, because your reviews help us improve as a channel. And if you guys could, on every platform you can imagine, share this podcast, it would mean the world to me. And it would be great to hear your thoughts, your opinions. And let us know what you would like us to discuss in a future episode of the podcast. Your input matters to us. So thank you so much. And that's it for us this week. Thank you again for listening. And we will talk to you again next week for episode 38. Have a good week, guys. Long days and pleasant nights, my friends.